Hello and welcome to the Comedy Slab podcast. Look, I'm laughing already and we haven't even started. I'm Shane O'Connor and he's Adrian Lacey. It might have something to do with the things that we say just before we start recording, but then that'd be telling a secret. If you've not heard the podcast before, basically Adrian and I get together every week and we'll have done our homework by listening or watching a comedy programme and we'll whack it on the slab, poke it and prod it a bit, tell you what we thought.
That's not a euphemism.
And if it was, it'd be a good one. Tell you what we thought of it. And at the end, we'll give it marks out of 10, 5 points each, and we'll let you into a secret as to what next week's program is going to be. Oh, and we pick them alternately, don't we? Which adds a bit of a jeopardy to it, because last week you picked Terry Alderton, and you were like trying to figure out what I thought of it, and of course the boot's been on the other foot this week because I picked this week's, and I've been sitting there thinking I'd love to send him a note now just to see what he thought of it, but all will be revealed anyway.
You were picking it, correct me if I'm wrong, from a position of being a believer, because sometimes we have the, roll the random dice of Russian roulette, and even the picker doesn't know whether they're going to like it. But this one, you're actually, am I right in thinking you were sort of recommending?
Well, I didn't recommend it. It's a bit strong. I mean, I'd heard it and I'd listened to it, and I think what I said to you last week was I want your help with this one because I'm doing a bit of fence sitting, I think, Adrian, with this one. I don't know. I mean, I might be doing less fence sitting than because isn't it different? First of all, I've got to say this. When you listen to or watch a TV program or a radio program, as you know, I'm going to enjoy this. I'm just going to sit there and I'm open-mindedly going to listen to it or watch it, whatever. It's so different, isn't it, from doing what we do on the slab? I got a different mindset, and I notice it when I think I'm being critical about things, and I think, if I was just watching this normally, there's no way I would even mention this. Yeah,
you would just let it flow over you. Do you think?
I think you'd be a lot more forgiving, wouldn't you? So you're probably hypercritical when we're doing this anyway. But yeah, I mean, I often find myself thinking, oh, should I say that? Is that being just way too harsh? Or
a few weeks ago, I think I was too harsh. Sorry to dive in on the one show, which I know we weren't slamming. But you were slamming rather than slabbing, and you whipped me up into a frenzy of, and actually I think, okay, yes, I am some of the time a BBC freelance, but actually I would defend the one show. You see, this is how decent I'm trying to be, from the point of view that they are well-produced stories within the one show.
It's nationwide, you fool. They've just rebranded it.
Yeah, but Nationwide produced Director General in terms of Mark Thompson, but that would probably lead you to have another go at Auntie.
I'm not driving a mini metro. I'm not driving a mini metro, as Alan Partridge once said.
I don't remember that. Which series was that in?
That was in I'm Alan Partridge, where she said it's a Rover Metro now, and he went, they've just rebadged it, you fool.
The status,
which is how
that's
I
not
feel.
The time he got graffitied on his car, but that was a Honda Civic, wasn't it, or a Triumph Accord, which is the same thing.
You've probably not seen this. I don't know, but you kind of got to think. Well, the one show is even being parodied now by, I think it's Lidl adverts, isn't it? Have you seen the Lidl advert that parodies them? Like, so was it Spring Watch or something, or?
Oh, and I might have done in passing. I don't, unlike you, who records, and you actually do your own sort of ad slab, don't you? Where you sit and digest adverts.
I've been like this since I think ever since I was able to say, "Tell them about the honey, mommy." I've had this,
which is a good party piece.
It is. It was. I'm silly when I was 5 and I could do it. It was it was really good. Awesome. I told you that, didn't I? I used to go out with my mum and we'd meet somebody, like we're walking down the street and she's, somebody my mum would know would bump into her and they're having a chat and she'd say, "Oh, and how old are you now, Shane?" And I go, "I'm 6.
Which freaked the living bejesus out of me.
Yeah, my mum would give me a good shake by the neck.
Which is why you turned out how you did.
Yeah, but I've always been fascinated with adverts, and I drive Angelina mad with it. I do. I kind of go. I said, look, they've changed the line on that now. They've taken that out and they put this in, and I'm
revoiced it.
I'm always fascinated because they do an advert, and you think, how did they let that get to air? And then, of course, it goes to a focus group, and then it gets changed.
And you're in the focus group, of course.
I should be, shouldn't I? I should.
Or the out of focus group.
I'm the bifocal group.
I'm in the very focal group. Can't see a thing.
Anyway, should we get back onto the slab? And the topic of the slab this week is My First Planet. You might not have caught up with this one because I think this takes us back to 2012. I was going to say 2012 then. That's this takes us back to 2012. I think was the first series, and 2014 I think was the second series.
Right. I think I did catch the odd bit of this, but only when I was washing up or cooking or something, and just randomly put the radio on. So I don't think I ever heard one beginning to end.
Okay. Well, it's set in space, isn't it? It's about a group of people who've been sent off. I think it's 75 years previously. To colonise another planet, you assume something's happened with Earth, don't you? That did they? I think they mentioned it, did they? That something had gone wrong with Earth, or
actually, funnily enough, I didn't assume that. I was happy that the premise was we're just going to colonise outer space. Whether they were, I could equally be happy with the idea that they were just an advanced party to test the waters. Yeah, because we're going to need to do it eventually, aren't we? The way we're getting through this particular planet.
Yeah. Well, just the bit I use is filthy. I mean, it needs.
That's just your room.
Yeah. Stars Nicholas Lyndhurst, of course, we mentioned from.
I sounded terribly slow. I listened back to that where you said, he was in a not very well known show, or words to that effect, called Only Fools and Horses, and I went sort of, thereby giving away that I've been up since 3 a.m. and I wasn't really listening properly. I apologise.
I just thought you were humouring me like you normally do. That's all. I thought, he's humouring me there. But of course, Nicholas Lyndhurst from Only Fools and Horses, and Vicky Pepperdine. I don't know who the star of the show is. I suppose Nick Lyndhurst would be, I guess, wouldn't he? If they had such a thing. Vicky Pepperdine, of course, from. Getting On was the thing that I knew her for, with Joe Brand, the thing that Joe Brand wrote. I think she wrote it with Joe Brand, actually, didn't she, Vicky Pepperdine?
Did she? I never saw that, and I should see it. Perhaps we should put that on the slab.
It's worth it. It's worth slabbing, definitely. Because I think, I suspect it could be a kind of a bit of a Marmite, that one. But I'll log that one away for future reference. And one of my faves, Tom Goodman Hill, who I said to you last week, was he was the policeman in Ideal, and he's done tons of stuff. Interesting. When I was just looking at to seeing what they'd all done, where and how. Do you ever remember? I mean, I know it was before my time, but I know of him, Mr. Pastry. Going way back when? Yeah, he was kind of like he was like the English Jacques Tati, I think is the best way to describe him, wasn't he? He was a very kind of physical comedy sort of guy. And if you look up Nicholas Lyndhurst on Internet Movie Database and all of those other things, he has a credit in 1957 for actually working with Mr. Pastry. That was the first thing he did on TV.
How could that work with the relative ages?
He must have been a kid, innit? Mustn't he? He must have been a child actor.
Must have been. Did you say 57, though? He wouldn't have been... He's not... How old is he now?
I don't know. I'll have to check. But then when the first mainstream thing that I saw him in was Going Straight, which was the spin-off from Porridge.
Right.
And he played Raymond, which was Fletcher's son, he must have been about 14 or 15 at the time, in real life and in the script as well. And then he went on to star in Butterflies, where he played one of the teenage sons of Wendy Craig in that.
That's a Carla Lane classic, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, so he did start quite young, He was. But it was interesting when I was looking at it. Vicky Pepperdine had done Giles Wembley Hogg, and so had Tom Goodman Hill. And there were a couple of other crossovers as well. Oh, Goodnight Sweetheart as well. Tom Goodman Hill and Nicholas Lyndhurst. Of course, it was Nicholas Lyndhurst's vehicle, wasn't it? Goodnight Sweetheart.
Right.
But Tom Goodman Hill had been in that as well. So their paths had crossed as actors in various other bits and pieces. Written by Phil Whelans, who I don't know anything of, really, do you? I mean, I don't think you've seen anything since.
I hadn't previously known of, but we also hear him as the character Archer in this particular show. We really must get on to clip number 1, mustn't we? But, I mean, we can get to it a bit later, but from the little digging I've done about Mr. Whelans, he's a talented all-rounder, really. A bit of a writer, director, performer, done the whole shebang.
Yeah, this seems to be his writing thing, doesn't it, really, I think, in terms of success. I mean, as I say, got 2 series out of this. Shall we have a clip? You're right. Let's have a listen to how it sounds. First clip I chose was it was like a kind of this is their first meeting, isn't it? Basically, what's happened is, just to get people up to speed, is that we find out that the captain hasn't survived the trip, and I won't. Well, I might spoil it later. We'll see how we get on. I was going to say there's a bit of a spoiler alert for how he ended up dying. But he ended up not making it. And so Nicholas Lyndhurst, who was the number 2, is now thrust into the role of captain. And one of the things he needs to do is obviously to call a meeting to discuss all the things they're going to do and the way forward. And, of course, one of the things they need to discuss, or which will always crop up, I guess, really, is this new planet. What are they going to call it?
I don't even know why anybody...
All right, settle down, everyone. I'd like to bring to order the inaugural meeting of the Colony Steering Committee for Planet XB1174.
Brian?
Yes, Carol, naming the planet is on the agenda.
Right, you are.
Although I must point out that we only arrived yesterday. We're the first group of humans ever to colonise another planet, and it's probably something we should mull over, rather than jump straight in and call it, Centrica or Andy Murray.
Centrica? That's not bad. I like Centrica.
You see, this is what I mean. People get caught up in the moment. I mean, look at that geologist we brought with us. What were her parents thinking?
Why? What's her name?
Jay-Z.
Sorry I'm late, everyone.
Sit down, Mason.
Yep, will do.
Now, item 1, we need to organise a meeting with all the colony.
What's going on? What's happening to my voice?
I'm going to.
We mustn't panic!
Sorry about that.
Mason?
Yeah, I thought I was switching the light on. The light switch and the switch for the air are right next to each other.
See, if it had been me, I'd have used real helium to get that effect on the voice. It wasn't quite as convincing as it could have been. I mean, it made the point. And perhaps that's splitting hairs, but that's what we do on the slab. We dissect hairs.
How would health and safety at the BBC get on with pumping the studio with...
I'm not suggesting you fill the entire space.
All right.
I was just thinking, this is the kind of dullard I am. I'm thinking, you do it as a pre-record in the afternoon in a localised area, and probably it would make my voice sound like that. So
that was Chris Morris's thing, wasn't it? He I don't know whether this is urban legend or whether he actually did it, but there was a theory going around that he'd filled the news booth at Radio Bristol with helium, so as the news reader started. But what makes me suspicious, and knowing people in radio as I do, is that there's no. I've never come across a clip of it.
No. The other thing is, again, Chris Morris legend number 2, and again, I think Radio Bristol was it. He very nearly, and the thing is, with a nearly, there won't be a recording because it didn't quite happen. But he was very close to getting a story about cows that couldn't be killed. Have you heard that legend?
No.
It does sound like him, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And apparently it was within an ace, and obviously someone was sober enough. There's something called the journalist's nose, and when it doesn't quite smell right, you think, oh, right, okay, I'll just query this.
Love him.
Anyway, the first thing I want to say, or another thing I want to say, is early on, I thought your man Tom Goodman Hill,
Yeah.
because I hadn't looked at the cast list at that stage, I mistook him for Julian Rhind-Tutt. Do you not think there's quite a similarity there? Green Wing.
Yeah,
actor.
Tom's who also thankfully does a lot of radio. That's one of the things I wanted to mention is that if you look at the actors, you look at Vicky Pepperdine, Tom Goodman Hill, in particular, they've done a lot of radio between them, haven't they? They're not they're not shy about the medium. They like doing radio comedies and plays and that sort of stuff. But I thought Tom Goodman Hill was playing it quite low key, and you're right. I think he does sound like Julian Rhind-Tutt actually.
And that brings me to the next point, my overall point. You know, I kind of, my heart sank a couple of weeks ago when we were working on that Sky show, You, Me and the Apocalypse, with Matt Bainton. And unfortunately, it all anchored, and people, you might want to go back into the Comedy Slab archive a couple of weeks to hear that if you haven't already.
Episode 37.
Thank you.
That's right.
I knew you'd know if anyone did.
I've become the stato of this podcast, haven't I? Just by
yes,
default?
you are. You're Mr. Stato.
Yeah.
We had a Stato where I worked in Shropshire once, and I hadn't come across the term before then. But yeah, he was very affectionately thought of, and and this is someone who it was a hobby for him to be across all these sort of minor details. Anyway, it was the word slough that kind of finished that show for me.
Yeah.
And I'm afraid I do have a problem with the name Brian here, which is slightly unfortunate because it is Nicholas Lyndhurst's character.
Yeah.
But there's a wider problem, which is, and I wonder if, and the clue is in the way I ask you the question, does anything occur to you as a West Midlander, kind of underlined, as to a shortfall in this show, which is, in a sense, I mean, I know it's a comedy and all of that, I get that, but in a sense, they're meant to be every people, aren't they? It's the human race colonising another planet. Did you have a general problem as a West Midlander? That's the clue.
What, in terms of the way they sounded, in terms of their accents? What do you mean? They were
Or
all
lack of, yeah.
Well, I don't know. Now you mention it, probably yes, but only retrospectively, because Nick Lyndhurst is Nick Lyndhurst, isn't he? I mean, he's not. He doesn't do anybody else, does he? Really? And
I have to say, he sounded slightly posher there than he does Fools and Horses. He's a little bit more Larry, sort of Peckham, isn't he? I guess he has to be.
Vicky Pepperdine, I said to you, she always she always sounds the same.
She's Vicky Pepperdine,
but I don't mean that as a criticism. Certainly, he's kind of Phil Whelans was playing Archer, who talks a bit like that. He wasn't so much the accents with me; it was the characterizations. Like there was the slow one, the reluctant one, the bossy one, the stupid one, and the chancer. It was. Do you know what I mean?
Is it all a bit too obvious for you then? That the characterization.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I thought a bit. It was because the plot lines all played around that, didn't they? Really, then in that way. But yeah, you're right. I never really noticed it before you said that. But you'd think they'd have got somebody from Newcastle or Rill or.
Well, I was thinking, I mean, Star Trek, I know it's not a comedy, but we're in, there's a crossover with sci-fi, obviously.
Yeah.
And in the 1960s, they managed to have a black woman and a Scot, as well as the Americans, black and white. I mean, that was the point of it, wasn't it? It was, it all emerged. It depends how you read it, and I'm sure there are different ways to interpret it, and I'm certainly not a Trekkie, but I did hear a documentary where it kind of said, it was born out of in a sense, out of the civil rights movement, or at least it coincided with that. And it was quite, to me, 50 years ago, that's quite revolutionary, isn't it?
Yeah, well, there were no other shows at that time, or have been since, that have featured a Vulcan. So,
yeah, you could say it's Vulcan tokenism, but
volcanism.
You've got to have at least one, or maybe at most one. But yeah, okay. Joke taken, but to me it sounds like what we're dissecting, My First Planet, it hasn't left the M25, which is great for a large chunk of the Radio 4 audience. But I include myself as I'm Southeast England, I sound horribly like some of these people, but I can take other accents. I would prefer it. It makes me slightly squirm that if anyone's kind of pandering to me just to keep me on board. No, I can actually cope with regional accents and different nations of the UK.
Don't you think though that they all? It's one of the, and I don't think it's because it's a Positive production, isn't it? Jeff Posner's company that made it,
and David Tyler's the producers, yeah.
And they've made, I mean, like tons of radio comedy, tons of TV comedy, haven't they? If they're huge in the business, but their radio stuff to me all kind of sounds the same. Do you get that?
I couldn't comment really because I haven't linked Positive to a certain sound. So I was actually looking at as David Tyler produced this, as I say. I was looking at some of the stuff he'd produced. Just very quickly, Jeremy Hardy speaks to the nation, and rest Jeremy's soul. You mentioned Giles Wembley Hogg, didn't you?
Giles Wembley. Cabin Pressure. It's kind of got a very similar sound to Cabin Pressure.
Benedict Cumberbatch, right? Yeah,
it's got a similar kind of cast list to or character list, I should say, to Cabin Pressure. You know, the bossy one is the mother, and the chancer is the second officer, and the stupid one is the first officer. You know what I mean? It's that kind of. It's very. I just wonder whether, and part of me thinks I get it. You've got a formula, and it works. So why would you rock the boat? But of course, that doesn't really always work for great comedy, does it? I suppose,
or any kind of creativity. Paul McCartney always said if there was a formula to writing songs, I'd rip it up anyway, or words to that effect.
Yeah,
and he never found a formula, never wanted to. Sorry,
and Nick Johns.
Let's not go there.
I don't
start me.
I don't mean it, Sir Paul. Even if you did, I'd still love you. Should we have another clip? Have another listen to another clip. The reason I chose this one was because you mentioned the writer Phil Whelans actually plays Archer. Which I did like.
Ultra empathic.
Well, he thinks he's there because he's empathic, but they think he's there because he's a plumber. I kind of like that. Yeah. I thought that was quite, the references and the cross chat about that. I thought it was quite good. And Mason, who is the character played by Tom Goodman Hill, is the chancer. So I suppose this is the slow one meets the chancer, isn't it? But basically, Mason calls Archer to his quarters. He wants to have a chat with him.
Thanks for dropping by, Archer. I wanted your advice as
an
a handyman. I wondered if you could build me a partition. Although, while you're here, and as an empath, what do you think about...
Well, it won't go all the way up to the ceiling, but I should be able to build something.
I was going to say, what do you make of Carol and Richard?
I sense something a deep love, but something not quite right.
Yeah, I'm glad you picked up on it too. I'm rather worried. It bodes badly for Project Adam. Perhaps we should go and have a word with Lillian.
Yes, for there may well be a way to save Project Adam.
Well, exactly. I mean, God knows I'd be happy to step in. I'd offer to step in. I want to step in.
No, I mean, I sense an energy between Brian and Dr. Lillian Pointer.
Brian and Lillian? Don't be ridiculous. Surely, well, I mean, I assumed she, liked her muffins buttered.
What?
She leaves her plates in the drainer.
I'm not sensing your meaning.
She changes trains at Crewe. She's got a short backlift. She can't find Brazil on the map. Archer, these are all layman's terms.
Yeah, that worked. That worked a treat. Although, to be honest, I like my muffins buttered as well, so I don't think that says anything about me in terms of orientation. But hey, I would say that, wouldn't I? Right, now, where do we go? I should just say, Project Adam, if we haven't touched on it already, is the project to get a couple to reproduce.
Repopulate, procreate, yeah.
Yes. Putting the creation into procreation. And I guess, any new community's got to think about that, although there is also the passing thought a bit later on that it'll sort itself out. Right. When you say chancer, you're meaning that sort of ducking and diving. He'd quite like to be involved in the procreation as well, and quite like to be leaded, do you think?
Yeah, he's like that. He's like that with everything, isn't he? He seems to be. Well, that's how he's developing as a character. He kind of seems to be, he wants to manipulate things to his advantage. Was the impression I got with him. I thought that was outstandingly the funniest part of the whole half hour. That made me laugh out loud. That when he was doing all the euphemism
plates in the drainer.
I was just like, what the, because he never actually says what he means by them at all, does he? So you were talking about orientation. I mean, we assume that's what he meant, but he was just.
But he doesn't actually. Yeah, it's all going on in the head, isn't it?
Yeah.
What's that line? Was it Maxwell? You once quoted to me when we were in radio together.
It's Tommy Trinder, wasn't it? Wasn't it Tommy Trinder?
Tommy Trinder. It's all clean leaving me.
Yeah, it was clean.
It's a fantastic defence, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
As long as there's one clean interpretation of something, you can put it on daytime mainstream Radio 4, can't you?
Yeah, exactly. What did you think of that storyline then? The whole procreation thing was that because that's where Vicky Pepperdine's character becomes. She's like this bossy doctor who they must mate now and all this kind of thing. I that didn't work for me at all. How do you get on with that?
I've written down in my notes, laid on with a trowel, and I've felt it was over-egged. I mean, we know the birds and the bees, that they are a major life force, or the major life force, otherwise we wouldn't be here. But you don't have to hang an entire heavy plot point on it to that degree, I don't think. I just thought there was a bit too much of that.
I think the other thing as well is you find yourself thinking, it's like I said to you about this thing I've got about dialogue, is that it really winds me up when I hear characters in soaps who I kind of have seen a bit of and kind of think I've got a handle on who they are and how they operate, and they say words that you think they would never say that. And in the same way, I kind of felt with this, you think people, whatever the circumstances, surely people wouldn't, even in your wildest excesses, wherever you've worked at places where you've been thrust into the environment of other people who you wouldn't normally share oxygen with, you think, I've never met anybody that intense or over the top, or what? Do you know what I mean? That's my benchmark.
In any walk of life, medical or otherwise.
You just wouldn't behave like that, would you? It's almost like surreal writing.
But then I suppose just trying to think what the defence might be. It's at the end of the day, it is a mainstream comedy. So I was thinking at various points of Eric Morecambe's quote to Glenda Jackson, who hadn't really done much comedy, if any at all, before she appeared on famously as Cleopatra and all of that on was it the Christmas special? Fantastic, yeah. And she said apparently to Eric Morecambe, how do I get laughs? He said, well, just play it louder and faster, and she followed that advice. Right. I'm sure there's a heck of a lot more to it, but so you have got to have things writ large and played large.
See, it's really weird because I thought you were going to say, and he said, "Don't try and get laughs. That's the way to get laughs. Is don't try and get them." Would be my advice. There is a certain thing, isn't there? Especially if you're trying to sort of ape reality, or you're trying to send up, I don't know, a mockumentary style as opposed to documentary. You do have to play it absolutely straight, as if the people believe every word they say, don't you? But that's a different genre, isn't it? Yeah, but it's like when you hear people if they've got to do public speaking and they've never done it before. One of the big mistakes people fall into is that they write something that they think is funny, and then they kind of go, and the monkeys have ate all the packed lunches, and then wait for the laugh, and then it doesn't come, and then that throws them.
Yeah,
and that's what I mean by that. It's about the timing thing again, isn't it? As well in comedy, is you You don't wait for a laugh. If it happens, you then react to it, but you don't actually wait for it and go, "Oh, that didn't happen, so I've got to carry on now and pick myself up," sort of thing. That's what I meant by that. Really, is that you don't try for it.
Yeah. Although to be fair, I wouldn't do that joke about the monkeys eating all the packed lunches. It's a weak joke.
Yes.
But talking of weak link. I'm not at all happy with the plumber, and of course he's written this role himself. So it's our man, Mr. Whelan's.
Go on. Why are you not?
I just think, we're meant to find it impossible. I mean, the comedy is to begin with. Oh, he's a plumber, therefore it's funny that he's empathic. Well, I happen to know a plumber who's also a singer-songwriter who has to be empathic, otherwise he couldn't write decent songs. And he knows other plumbers who are also either in their spare time or
he wasn't able to go plumbers,
pro.
though, was he? I mean,
Well, but it's the idea. Well, he's working class. He's it's a manual job. He's not meant to be emotionally literate. It may well be true for a percentage, but
I didn't read it like that at all. I just read it that he just got it. I mean, it almost is a double joke because he's so not empathic that he doesn't get that he's been hired because he's a plumber. Do you know what I mean? But I didn't.
But then you'd have to suspend quite a bit of disbelief for him not actually to hear them say you're here as a plumber, because they do actually spell it out. But I guess it's consistent with being
But he doesn't want to, does he?
and-
Because he's convinced that he's empathic, doesn't he? That I mean, I do like the way, and this goes, as you would imagine, goes through the rest of the series, because I've heard other episodes, but I do like the way he talks along, and I think the timing's quite good on that. He talks along and he tries to guess what people are saying. And
second guess, and then he'll correct it to fit in with them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I did get that. Did raise a smile with me.
in his own mind, he's not heard the bits where he's been guessing and having a stab at it. He's only got the bit where he got it right, where he actually said it 3 seconds after the person said it to him. Which, but yeah, I mean, the voice, I think, is probably what led you to think that. Do you think?
Well, it's a little bit lazy, isn't it? It's a trope,
slow.
and
Yeah.
And I'm going to make a prediction. You'll shoot me down as Mr. PC and all of that, but I'm going to predict that, I couldn't say exactly when it's going to happen, but in the next decade or two, we will not have, quotes, thick characters. Because I think we'll find other ways to entertain ourselves that are slightly less lazy. But even as I say that, I love Baldrick in Blackadder, so I wouldn't want him not to exist.
Oh, and what about Percy in Blackadder?
Percy Pig? Oh.
Hugh Laurie's,
remind me.
Hugh Laurie's character.
Oh, yeah.
Is it
okay.
Percy? Or is that Tim McInerney? I can't remember which one's which, but...
but Laurie is the lower
He's the Prince
intelligence
Regent,
of the two,
isn't he?
he?
Yeah.
Oh, you're thinking of 2. I was on 4. But also, he is. They're all a bit slow, aren't they? The toffs are a bit slow in Blackadder Goes Forth.
Yeah, I mean that's the dynamic,
forget
isn't
that.
it? Vicar of Dibley with Alice Tinker, a verger. You know, it's the same dynamic, exactly the same thing. I mean, I've got this theory that the Vicar of Dibley is Blackadder and vice versa, but maybe that's for another day. But yeah,
Vicky Pepper. No, Vicar of Adder. No,
when you said about I'm going to make a prediction in 10 years' time, they won't have any plumbers in sitcoms.
No, it'll all be plumbers. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe there won't be a comedy slab. The way we're going, there won't be one next week.
No.
Or at least it'll be this continuous one. Must be time for, what the heck are we on? Clip number 3 now.
Yeah,
Gosh.
final one, yeah.
Do you want to talk us into it?
Well, it's another meeting, but it's far more serious, as we're about to hear. We mentioned that the captain had died, and he hadn't made it through the journey, but they've done a few bits of check-in, and they've got to meet because they all need to hear some terrible news.
Well, as you know, Burroughs died during the journey from Earth.
Yes, yes, sad. Go on.
Well, it would seem that between the time Burroughs failed to activate his cryotube and his death, there passed, roughly, 38 years.
Oh my God!
That's horrible. The relentless, crushing loneliness.
He tried to pass the time, taught himself Portuguese, learned how to fence.
Well, surely you'd have built one somewhere and we... Fencing, yeah, sorry.
He kept a journal, but the latter entries are too impossible to read.
Well, the despair he must have felt.
No, they're in Portuguese.
Is that the bad news?
I'm afraid not. During his time alone, wandering the ship, Burroughs managed to eat his way through the greater part of our entire food supply.
How great a part?
Well, I'd say around 11/13.
Oh, crap.
Quite. Those supplies were intended to last 30 of us about a year, by which time we'd be self-sufficient.
Well, what are we going to do?
Well, I'll go full steam ahead, trying to create a source of synthetic protein.
Right. Carol, as our botanist, you'll have to go full-time on the hydroponic crop growth project.
Out of the question. Carol and Richard must mate. Mate. As we speak, Carol should be on her back, listening to her ankles.
Okay, so we get the anatomy, although listening to your ankles, yeah, okay, sort of works. And yes, let's park that there. Well, it's your Madame Pepperdine being Madame Pepperdine. Yeah, she is. She's writ large, but yeah, I can kind of live with that. There's loads of good comedy callbacks. It is littered with those in a nice way, I think. One thing I haven't raised, a very fundamental thing. What do you make of the title, My First Planet?
I quite like it, actually. I thought it was nicely subtle.
What do you think it is? Because I've got my own theory about it, but I might be totally wrong.
Oh, go on. Because I'm the man who didn't get Ideal, so I'm hardly want to talk, am I?
Well, yes, because that was a show where the
he's a drug dealer,
leading character was
Ideal.
He yeah.
And if you missed it, it's a bit of classic comedy. It's episode 27 of the.
I think you didn't need to fall quite on your sword in the way you did. I mean, it could happen to anyone.
I was gutted. I'm telling you, I was really gutted. I've not slept properly since that revelation.
I can hear the PTSD symptoms.
So I don't really want to talk about titles and what they mean. But go on.
Well, when I were a lad, we used to have books where, I don't know if it's still the case. I mean, you've got a young son, but he won't be reading yet, but you'll be reading to him. But you used to have books which were prefixed with my first, because they would be my first encyclopedia, my first short story book, my first wildlife book, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And I felt it was a callback to that. But if it is, and I could be totally wrong, it doesn't really work because they're not kids. Also, I'm not convinced, I'm not a parent, but I don't think books are still called that. And even if they are, what's that got to do with a whole new colony?
Right.
I mean,
I got the same reference as well. That it was like kind of, but to me, it was like a wonderfully juvenile thing. You know, it's My First Planet. You know, they were experimenting. They didn't really know what they were doing with it.
But it's not our first planet, is it? It's solo, singular. Presumably, it would be Brian himself, would it? I know I'm taking this to the
well, it'd be everybody's.
Extremes.
It'd be everybody's My First Planet to them, wouldn't it?
But it's not their first planet. They've left planet Earth.
But it's the first one that they're looking after, isn't it? In a way. Do you know what I mean?
Are you defending them? Are you defending the indefensible?
No, I thought that worked for me, but
okay, no. It's obviously me. It's not you. It's me.
I think I just want to get me own back for Ideal. I just
carry on.
To me,
you don't have to. You're not on the back foot. If it works, it works.
I just thought it could have been a lot more overt. It could, they could have chosen something really quite obvious, and titles are important to me, I think. And I think they kind of set your stall out as to what you're going to hear or what you're going to see. But
I've only got a real naff offering, which would only be off the top of my head, but it's really, really awful, and I wouldn't. Yeah, it's not actually an improvement. It would be something like Out of This World. But that would be my first... Yeah,
that's exactly the kind of thing I didn't want it to be.
Yeah, exactly. Which is why
Lost in
Phil
Space.
Whelan's got the gig, and
Yeah.
I'm sure there must be some better a middle ground or something, but I can't think of it right now.
Let me let the cat out the bag for you with this one, because I said to you I want your help with this. And the problem that I have with it is that, I mean, you were saying the comedy callbacks, there was one about fencing there, where they'd made this earlier protracted gag about two of the inhabitants of the planet were pretending to be a couple, but they weren't actually a couple, and so they'd been talking about fencing, but he'd been talking about it in the sense of DIY, and she'd been talking about it in the sense of sword play, and I thought, oh, that is just so lazy and obvious a joke, and I don't think. I mean, the only point I laughed at this was the euphemisms, but I still enjoyed it, and that's why I thought I need your help, because I kind of there's part of me that kind of thinks I should be destroying this, but I really enjoy listening to it.
Well, why is there any part of you that should be destroying it? Because of the obviousness in various points, you mean?
Yeah, because it's not. I mean, it's not as funny as something like Cabin Pressure or Bleak Expectations or something of that nature. It's not up there by any stretch. I mean, it only got 2 series, and I presume it only got a second series because Nicholas Lyndhurst's in it. And he doesn't. He's a big name, isn't he? Because of Only Fools, there's no question. So I think if you
kind of touched on the fact he's not actually. I mean, he's the star name and he comes top of the list, but actually the way it's written, he doesn't. I mean, he is sort of he's quasi leader, isn't he? But de facto leader, but somehow he doesn't stand out as this amazing character. And also, I think that might be. Again, coming back to my over-laboured point probably, but all the accents merge, and so the male voices are quite close to each other. So in that sense, he doesn't stand out. Sorry, I think I interrupted you.
No, you didn't. No, you're right. He's like a linking character, isn't he, I think? And that's why I said you kind of look at it and you think, well, I'm not really sure who the lead character would be.
Does it matter, though? I mean, it is an ensemble piece if we kind of agree it doesn't have a standout leader or star role. Yeah. He's the biggest name. But
Did you notice the audience? They weren't exactly killing themselves laughing, were they?
But I was almost thinking the opposite. I thought things were landing okay. Maybe okay is the phrase there. I thought they warmed to it. But there's no sort of build, and a really, really big killer moment towards the end. You were talking in the Alan Partridge week, the show called This Time, about how I'd heard Steve Coogan, talking about building to a bigger and bigger laugh, and that's what you want. There isn't that. It's a kind of steady thing. What it makes me think of is it's drive time humour for Radio 4 listeners. Yes. You're sitting in traffic, perfectly pleasant. You might have switched on a bit late because you were working late. You're thinking about the evening ahead, and it's perfectly pleasant listening. Yeah,
you can plop into it at any stage and not think, I don't know where I am with this.
Yeah. But I return to the point. For me, it's crying out for someone outside the M25 to actually be heard in the show. It is just too safe Radio 4 territory. And I understand all the parameters, but still Radio 4 can make shows that surprise and delight and push the boundaries a bit. I know you've got to be careful. This sounds to me like a 6:30 slot rather than it's not a late night experimental slot, obviously. Unlike Terry Alderton last week. No.
And I think it is formulaic. I think it does follow the kind of Cabin Pressure, Hut 33, Clearing the Community, those kind of... They all sound... They're all positive productions, actually, and they all sound like...
Oh.
Yeah, they all kind of come... To me, they all sound like they come from the same stable. I mean, I always think of you with the audio and the effort that's put into the audio. And there was a scene where Vicky Pepperdine was the other side of an automatic door, and she was quite obviously, when the door closed, just putting her hand to her mouth. And I just thought, really?
Yeah, That's lo-fi.
Is it the best they can do? I don't know.
A sound screen could have had the same effect, because I understand the limitations of playing live in front of a studio audience, and actually it's not really a limitation. That's just how they do things, and that's how I would want to do it. Notwithstanding my comments about the helium pre-record. That was a bit lo-fi.
There's a difference, isn't there, between, like you say, putting something up in front of the microphone and going like that and talking quite obviously in your hand. You think, I don't know. Anyway, it's time to put those slabby scores down.
I thought you were going all Pipkins on us again.
It's
time.
I'm picking them hungry.
You want a brummie?
Whose turn is it to waz them up first?
I think you've got to go. I think you go first, although I have already decided on my score, and I will stand by it regardless of what you come back with, although I'm intrigued what you're going to give it.
I'm going to give it a 2.5.
I thought you were.
And the reason I give it a 2.5 is because the bottom line is, whatever else I say, I did enjoy it and I did like it.
But you're saying that like 2.5 is a generous score.
Well, it is, isn't it? It's halfway there, really, if you think about it. I mean, it's...
No, but it's halfway not there. I mean, glass half empty.
Oh, see, I'm half full. I'm going, wow, This is half full. Look, 2.5 in this glass. That's amazing. Look.
Yeah. That's the difference between us.
Depends how big your glass is, doesn't it, really, I suppose?
Anyway, I'm going at half a notch above that. I'm going to give it 3, which I decided some time ago, which is unlike me to actually think about it in advance. I actually think there's more going on and a bit more sophistication in the script than I initially, in my first listen, gave it credit for.
Right.
And because I know how fiendishly tough writing comedy is, performing it, getting laughs, I know that, they're all pros and that's what they do for a living. But in my world, 2.5 is slightly mean. But, you've got to be able to give the score you want. And I want to give the signal that it's definitely worth a listen. And there's loads of good stuff going on. But, it's still dropped 2 points out of 5 for me, so it's got a way to go.
2.5 is the score of neutrality for me, because it's neither genius nor cack.
Not to put too fine a point. Well, I want to give the signal that it's better than neutral.
Okay,
that is my feeling.
Well, either way, it's got a 5.5 out of 10, which is no bad. My First Planet, unfortunately, you can't hear it anywhere.
You hopelessly not on this planet anyway.
Apart from if you go around to Nicholas Lyndhurst's house and ask him.
He's got a few tapes in the garage.
Yeah, you can, however, buy it on Amazon, and I'll put a link on the description. So if you want to go and buy Series 1 in its entirety, and you can also get hold of Series 2 on Amazon. And they also do it through Audible and through the Positive Productions website as well. You can catch up with all of those. So fear not, there are ways you can catch hold of it if you wanted to. Now, next week.
Well, yes. I am going for a fairly safe bet in terms of, I happen to know, I'm pretty sure you're going to like this, because I'm sure you've made reference to liking this show in a previous series. Would you believe it's on Series 7 now? If I could have found this the other week when I wanted the opposite of the all bells and buzzers and visual effects and everything of the aforementioned Acropolis. Yeah, something like that. Atropolis. You, me, and the Apocalypse, if only I could say it. I was looking for, that was the Sgt. Pepper I was saying. I was looking for the White Album. And I just wanted a solo artist. In the event, I'm very glad we both, I think we discovered Terry Alderton. That was a good thing. But if I could have found a solo artist in front of an audience on the radio, nothing else, no bells and buzzers, no effects, no, as far as I know, no inserts, actually, no pre-records, I would have... do you want to guess this one? Solo artist, Series 7, something I happen to know that I believe that you like.
so long. No, I can't think. My mind's gone even more blank than normal.
Well, I'm going to encourage you and our listeners to meet David Sedaris, who is back on our wirelesses every week. And the one that's just gone out, so this is, slightly off the wall in terms of, it's not episode 1, series 1. This is episode 2 of series 7, and it's episode 2 of 6. It's obviously, they've got a run of 6 again. So it's the most recent one as we speak on BBC Sounds. That will be on the app. This is in the UK. I think most radio, you can stream outside the UK. So if you go to BBC, well, outside the UK, it's bbc.com. Obviously, within the UK, most of our listeners will already know. It's burnt into your brain at birth here. bbc.co.uk, and you'll just search for Meet David Sedaris, or just put Sedaris. That's pretty unique, I think.
Series 7, episode 2, did you say?
I did indeed. The most recent one as we speak to have gone out, which means it's got the most days on it as I speak.
All right.
In the window of opportunity. So I think you're going to enjoy it. You have said you like David Sedaris before, haven't you?
Stop fishing. You're fishing again. You're on a fishing expedition every time he does this to me. He said, honestly,
we're not allowed to fish.
He's like a little Essex boy with his pin trying to winkle me out my shell, and I'm not having any of it.
I'm wondering where that was going to go there.
Yes.
I was thinking of all the Essex girl jokes, but we won't go down that particular route.
Yeah, no, see, I've defined them in a whole new characterisation. They're all winkle pickers.
That's what they wear.
That's what they wear.
Right.
Yeah. That's it for another episode of the Comedy Slab. Thank you so much for your attention, your company, your patronage, and anything else you've been doing while you've been listening, you filthy swine, you. We'll be back next time listening to David Sedaris. In the meantime, if you want to catch us on social media, you can. We've got a Facebook page. We've got Twitter. That's about it, isn't it? I think, really. I was going to set up what's the photograph one?
Instagram.
Granddad.
Yeah. Instagram.
Yeah. Well, I was going to set up an Instagram one, but yeah.
Couldn't be bothered.
I'm a granddad, so what the heck. Comedy Slab is the way to find us, at Comedy Slab on Facebook and on Twitter.
You've stolen my social meds line.
I thought we'd mix it up. I thought you'd do the you can grab us in unusual places.
Oh, I thought you'd sort of said that, but then unfortunately I had one of those Fools and Horses moments where I drifted off. But no, I was just looking at my notes to see if I'd missed anything. I think it's me that makes you glaze over, isn't it? I've come to the conclusion. Anyway, well, actually, no, I was thinking only last week. There's no particular merit to listing all the platforms, is there? Because it's wherever you found us and go to your favourite podcast app. Doesn't that sort of cover it? Search Comedy Slab. I mean, no offence to you, all these weeks you've been going into minuscule detail.
Flogging me
as we all get older. But yeah, I mean, we fan out from Spreaker. That's a phrase you don't often get to use.
No. What'd you do today? Mainly I fanned out from Spreaker.
Yeah, I think I'm going to leave it there. But, we wouldn't mind a generous star rating on iTunes / Apple Podcast, and personal recommendation to friends and family and everyone in between and beyond, even beyond this planet. Anyway, it remains for me to go off and mate, by which I mean I'm going off to see 3 mates. I don't know what you thought.
And
you?
I'm going to see if I can, like you, find a songwriting plumber.
Who's empathic or thinks he is.
That'd be a bonus, wouldn't it? We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.